Good morning and good afternoon, depends on where you are, everybody. My name is Timothy, and I'm from LexisNexis. First of all, welcome everybody in joining the LexisNexis Knowledge Sharing Webinar, Thriving in the New Normal and Beyond Through Legal Technology. And before we start, I'd like to keep some housekeeping matters for everybody. Whenever you sign in, please make sure you stay on mute in order to cause any disruption to the speaker during their presentation. It will be much appreciated. If you have any questions for the speakers, please feel free to private message LexisNexis Hong Kong, or you can drop your message in or your question in the chat box directly as well, which we will be able to read out the questions and we'll address them at the end of today's seminar. So if you have any questions or any queries, please feel free to let us know by the chat box as well. So without further ado, today we're very honored to have three distinguished speakers with us today. Before we start, let me like to introduce to you all about all these three speakers. First of all, we are very honored to have Professor Wong. Professor Wong is the director of the Center for Innovation and Technology of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And as the second speaker we have today is Mr. Eric Robinson, who is the solution architect and senior consultant of KLDiscovery. Last but not least, our third speaker is Mr. Sam Yip, who is the co-founder of TranslateFX. And today our itinerary will start off with Professor Wong's presentation, followed by Mr. Eric Robinson, and last but not least with Mr. Sam Yip's presentation. We'd like to give you a little brief introduction as to the three speakers for everybody's understanding and reference. We understand today we have quite a number of in-house counsels and also law firm practitioners joining us today. Professor Wong is the Associate Dean, External Affairs of the Faculty of Engineering, Professor in the Department of Systems Engineering and Engineering Management, Director of the Center for Innovation and Technology, and Associate Director of the Center for Entrepreneurship of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. His research interest focuses on Chinese natural language processing and database. He has published over 260 technical papers in these areas in different international journals, conferences, and books. He is a senior member of IEE, fellows of BCS UK, IE UK, and HKIE. He's also the founding editor-in-chief of the ACM Transactions on Asian Language Processing, an international journal on computational linguistics and Chinese language processing. Professor Wong was also awarded the Medal of Honor by the Hong Kong government in 2011 in his contribution in IT development in Hong Kong. And so that's the brief introduction of Professor Wong. We're very happy to have you with us today. The second speaker is Mr. Eric Robinson. Eric has more than 20 years of accumulated legal, e-discovery, and project management experience. In KLDiscovery, he works consultatively with clients to develop and implement cost-effective, efficient, defensible discovery, data governance, and data privacy compliance strategies. Leveraging his experience in operational analysis and design with his knowledge of current legal trends, he designs defensible strategies and technology solutions to optimize client efficiency in alignment with industry accepted practices. So thank you very much for joining us today, Eric. And our last speaker, Mr. Sam Yip, he is the co-founder of TranslateFX, an AI translation company specializing in translation solutions for financial and legal sectors. TranslateFX helps clients incorporate the latest advancements in AI software and also uses its own technology to provide end-to-end translation services. So thank you very much, Sam, for joining us today. So today our itinerary will start with Professor Wong, followed by Eric and Sam. And then we will have a panel discussion among all these three speakers, followed by a Q&A. We'll open the floor for the questions. So without further ado, we'll pass the floor to Professor Wong. You may have the floor, please, Professor.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I think this particular panel comes in quite timely. I mean, we all know that for the past year, everyone, not just in Hong Kong, but all over the world, is actually suffering from the pandemic. And then many of us, even like in the university now, we can't even have sort of face-to-face, classes, everything is actually done online. And I think this this online mode leads us to a new normal. Then I think more and more that we actually need to be, prepared. So I think digital transformation is coming, and if you are a company, if your law firm is still, looking into piles after piles of papers, I think you must really think seriously to do the transformation. But it's easy to say, but it's not that easy to do. So I just want to share with you the kind of research that I'm doing, which is kind of related to digital transformation in general, but I think is equally applicable to the legal fields. Next slide, please. Okay. Next slide. Eye control. So okay, please, next slide. Okay. So these are the things that we have to care about when we do the digital transformation, especially in the legal industry. Okay. So incidentally, we use the word legal tech quite a lot about innovation technology for the legal sector. I just want to make sure that everybody is clear when we talk about legal tech, or when we talk about fintech, or when we talk about edutech, whatever tech, the X tech, whatever that may be. The mindset should be all changed. In the old days, in the previous era, we always thought about application driven, and technology is more like a facilitator. Not anymore. I mean, what we are looking at when we're talking about legal tech, we are looking at with the technology itself, what kind of new paradigm can we create, which can actually make the legal business run more efficiently, more safely. So I think that is something that we have to bear in mind. Okay, whatever there is that the technology can help you to change the model, I think we should be more open-minded and prepare for the changes. But anyway, the first thing first, obviously, you have to transform your environment, digital transform your environment. And these are the things that you would come across. One thing is explainability or traceability, which is on the user interface side. And the other one is uncertainty, rumor detection, which is on the data analysis side. And then the other one is on data privacy, which is on the data collection side. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, explainability and traceability, the previous slide, please. The one. Okay. So what it means is in here is particularly because of we use a lot of AI today, and the AI use a lot of big data. Actually, it's actually past data that you have, and we're trying to extract sort of behavior or trends out from these data using deep learning, for example. But for those of you who know a little bit about this technology, you will see that it is what we call an end-to-end technology. You give me the input, like a question that you want to ask, and obviously I can give you the answers. Okay, but for legal environment, I'm sure that your clients do not just want the answers. They would probably have a follow-up and ask you, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why do you make this a suggestion? You, as a lawyer, will have to make the explanation, the clarification. So, but unfortunately, in big data analysis and in deep learning technology, that has been deprived. Okay, we only deal with end-to-end. So there's a class of research now, we call it explainable AI or XAI, which is one of the research area that I'm working on. Next one, please. Next slide, please. So for the traceability part, for the explainability part, I have to give you an example as well. In the real situation is that the lawyers are very busy. Okay, so you may want to have some of your colleagues or junior staff who can actually serve as, well, you can call it call center or at the interface. And then when they were talking to your client, you would need a lot more of these people talking to your clients, especially during the COVID time where everybody is actually working online. In order to save money, what you can try is to use Chatbot, and the Chatbot can do the job for you. But then, as I said again, if the Chatbot is just like a dummy without being able to explain the decisions or recommendation that it makes, then it won't be good for you. So therefore, that's why what I said when I said that this is an interface layer problem, is because in the future, more and more chatbot will be in place to help you to run the business. And the second idea, the second problem that I'm working on is actually on data analysis. You're working on an AI, you collect a lot of information. As you know, these information, some of them may be fake news. Some of these are misinformation. And if you have to make a decisions out of this sort of ruined information or fake information, then the conclusion that you come out will be wrong. So uncertainty and rumor detection is something that we are very seriously looking into that. It is hard to define rumor. This is true. So what we focus more on is what we call uncertainty. So for example, like in Wikipedia, sometimes you would see a term being coined in Wikipedia, but somehow there's a comment saying that there's no proof, or there's not enough citation. That is a form of uncertainty. But something that is not been backed up, then it is uncertain. So what one can do, for example, given a corpus, given a lot of information, a lot of textual information, at least you can do is to find out whether some of the points are justified or not. But justification is not a dichotomy. It's not yes or no. So in fact, it is a spectrum. So usually what we do is that for every words, we will say that how certain this word is with certain degree. And then based on the certain uncertain values, then you can decide how you can make a decision. Okay, sometimes we do make decisions under certain uncertainties, but at least what you have to do is that you have to detect the uncertainty first. So therefore, in data analysis, in the legal trade, in the legal business, I think uncertainty detection is very important in data analysis. So next, please. Next slide, please. Well, this is my final slide. It's actually, before we can do the analysis, we must be able to collect data, okay, collect data. In fact, the collection of data, this process itself would become, I would say, would become easier, because once you get the data, you are into the digital economy, everything is in digital, then it will be easier for you to collect data rather than in the current time where you send your staff to to your clients' offices to collect data. So very likely that in the future, in the digital economy, then all the data will be widely spread, and then you can collect different information. Okay, but have you got the rights to collect the information? Okay, so the data privacy problem will be a very serious problem in the future. But being a lawyer, and you are the one who actually violate these sort of regulations, that would be a bit strange. So we all know that data collection will come in a very vast manner, and for that you have to make sure that you have your staff or your automatic sort of spider or the crawler have to well understand or to well follow some of these data governance rules. And one of the reference that you can get is, for example, in Europe, what we call the General Data Protection Regulations. That is something that is widely used in Europe, and very likely that it will come in, for example, in Hong Kong as well. So, but whatever that regulations are, but it is important that make sure that data privacy, the security of the data, and the rights of your clients have to be honored. Okay, so this is another research that I do. These are big problems. I mean, it's not easy to actually go through everything in 15 minutes, but I'm happy to further discuss with you in the rest of the rest of the time. So with that, I finish my presentation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Professor Wong, for your presentation. I'm sure probably when we move on to the panel session, probably have more questions for you, and we'll discuss further in relation to GDPR, the issues, or what types of benefits or what area of law will benefit most out of this legal technology advancements. Thank you, Professor Wong, for your sharing. And we'll now pass the floor to Mr. Eric Robinson to share on his KLDiscovery insights. Eric, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here and to address you all today, and to collaborate with people such as the professor and the folks from LexisNexis and Sam. So in this conversation around the impact of technology, particularly in this age of the COVID pandemic, there are a lot of things that are happening, and I think as we've all seen through the course of our careers, technology changes quickly. And at KLDiscovery, the things that we focus on are the elements to make our clients' lives easier. And in doing that, we look at what technologies are available, what technologies can we create in order to achieve that. And it's an interesting concept in how we approach that. And we do it on a global basis. So it can vary slightly based upon geographic region, based upon cultural impacts and other elements like that. In the APAC region, my colleague Katsuya Yoshida, who is participating silently today, works with our clients in the region to address some of these issues. When we and I'm having trouble forwarding the slides. There we go. So what we're talking about today in an overview, and what we're going to talk about in 15 minutes is something that as the professor indicated, we could spend hours discussing. But as a quick snapshot, we're going to talk about how the world has changed, and in doing that, the controls for forwarding the slides keeps disappearing on me here. There we go. We talk about COVID and the impact of what this has meant, and it's been a significant impact on the world. No matter where you live, COVID has had an impact in how we approach things, whether it's remote working, whether it's how we, from a litigation and electronic discovery component, how we address those processes. But what we do know is that necessity leads to invention. And out of things like the COVID pandemic, there have been changes in not only technology, but in processes and protocols to meet the needs of clients where they're at. And if I can stress anything, there are two basic rules. One is that technology will always change faster than the technology that's available to collect, process, and review it. And the second rule is that rule number one is always in charge. So we see this on a day-to-day basis. And from a perspective of where we're seeing things going, I think we can all agree that cloud-based systems is the wave of the future. While there are still organizations that are primarily on-premise solutions, even those organizations that have resisted this movement to the cloud are starting in small steps to start to leverage the efficiencies and the benefits, whether they're cost or processing times or indexing speeds, of leveraging cloud-based systems where they don't have to maintain internal infrastructure. But there are limitations. I mean, what is the accessibility? Where is the data stored? as the professor indicated, we have to be constantly aware of what the local or regional data protection, data privacy, and other regulations are around data, because it has a significant impact on how data gets managed. When we start to talk about technology that has come out of this COVID pandemic, we can look at things like remote collections as a way of example. So the remote collection of things like laptops and servers is not something that's actually new. For us at KLDiscovery, it's something that we've done, and we have proprietary technology that we've used with that. What the COVID pandemic did facilitate was, how do we now manage mobile device collections when we can't send a forensic analyst to a corporate or a law firm location, or individuals aren't willing to live without their phone for 2 to 3 days by the time you ship devices back and forth. So again, with necessity being the mother of invention, we've designed and developed and implemented a remote mobile device collection kit that allows us to do that. And I'm not doing that to kind of plug KLDiscovery in some grand way, but just as a way to exemplify how technology looks to keep up with where our clients are at any given point in time. But the key to all of this is, no matter what that new technology may be, is to ensure that you have a defensible and efficient process in place. It has to go hand in hand with the technology. And this leads to this balancing act that we've talked about and referenced some of the elements around data privacy. And this is a huge, no matter where you're at in the world, data privacy is forefront of these conversations. Whether you're in Europe and you're dealing with the GDPR, as the professor mentioned, or you're in the United States, where you're having to deal with new regulatory schemes like the California Consumer Protection Act and the myriad of other states within the US that have passed regulations and legislation. And the likelihood of some sort of national standard within the United States that is probably still at least a year away, given the way that politics and these things have to move through the system, but is an inevitable evolution of these processes. And it's not just here. In the APAC region, we see different regimes for how data privacy and data protection is managed. We can see differences in regulatory schemes from China to Korea to Japan. And living in a global economy, will we ever see a true global standard for data privacy and data protection? I would wager my next paycheck that we won't see it in our lifetimes. At some point, maybe it's possible. But we have to be aware of these things, because these things impact everything we do, and the technology we leverage and the evolution that happens has to be done in light of these regulatory schemes. And how do we balance those data privacy, data protection regimes with our legal and regulatory requirements in the legal process? There we go. And this leads us to the next point of conversation is what are these new sources of data? Listen, I mean, if there's anyone who's participating in this discussion today, either as a panelist or as a participant, who hasn't been on the internet, then you're probably in the wrong place. But the environment, the internet is changing dramatically on a daily basis. I don't care whether you're 16-year-old or a 60-year-old, you're at some point out there on the internet doing something, whether it's Facebook or Netflix or TikTok, making videos of dancing in the street or whatever it may be. But the reason I bring this forward is that this is a perfect example of how technology is changing in a very quick way. And understanding that it's changing so quickly is an important function, because we will always be chasing where technology is at. But understanding that it is continuing to evolve is a key element. But it also leads into the legal process. In understanding what technologies and what data sources are out there, being able to then guide where our development goes in order to meet those data needs. So again, just to kind of raise that as an awareness perspective. And all right, slides are not advancing. There we go. One of the key components of the things that that we see in evolution from a true business perspective is this rise of collaboration and communication platforms. I mean, I am old enough to go back to where email was new, and email became this great new unicorn of communication, where all of a sudden we can communicate almost instantaneously with each other from anywhere in the world. Today, email is quickly becoming a secondary source of communication. So you have, whether it's Microsoft 365 or Slack or Bloomberg or the G Suite, or like today we're participating on a Zoom meeting. 10 years ago, we never would have thought of this. We had WebEx, but WebEx even then 10 years ago was a little clunky. But even if we go beyond that, business entities are starting to use other platforms like WeChat and WhatsApp, for general business communication, particularly on a global scale. So we have to be aware of these things, and we have to understand how these technologies impact us from a legal perspective. Where does that data reside? How do we get to it? And then how do we pull that data out and then present it for legal review in a way that is actually usable and defensible? And those are all the areas where technology is looking to keep up. One of the things the pandemic has resulted in is, I'll just use Microsoft Teams as an example. So from the period of March 12th, 2020 through April 30th, 2020, the use and subscription to Microsoft Teams increased from 32 million corporate users to 75 million corporate users. So that's more than a 2x multiplier in a 1.5 month period. And that's just one platform. So if that's on one platform, consider what's happening around the world. And if you want to look at industries that are driving change in technology and communication technology, look at the financial industry. There's no industry out there that is leveraging newer technologies more readily than the financial services sector. They're communicating across agents, brokers, dealers in a way that they need this rapid line of communication that then can be tracked and used for defensibility and regulatory purposes. And then if we talk about other elements of the legal side, things like Snapchat and TikTok, are things that are areas where they're just starting to really become a significant issue in how we do it. Maybe not in our business communications yet, but in other forms of litigation, personal injury, those types of things, where those things, product liability, where those things come into play. And I mentioned this element of where data is stored. Again, understanding how data relates to itself is really important. In most of the platforms we referenced, you can have a one-to-many relationship or a one-to-one relationship. So understanding these technologies is key to evolving new technologies in order to capture and present them in a way that is meaningful from a legal review perspective. And we can't forget things like social media, mobile device data, and the Internet of Things. A lot of these things get intermixed, but at the end of the day, this is just an example of the fact that there are a multitude of platforms out there that are evolving, and new ones are coming up on almost a daily basis. If you ever have a question about what's new out there, go ask your teenager, because I keep hearing about new communication platforms on a daily basis. with some of the legal issues that TikTok has had here in the US, we've had the rise of other platforms that are now being used for similar purposes. So again, understanding that. And the Internet of Things is something that has kind of been this quiet escalator of technologies, because most people don't really appreciate how many devices, how many platforms are out there where the Internet of Things is actually capturing data that may be required for litigation and legal purposes, and understanding that is critical. And then understanding where that data is when we come back to the data privacy and data protection regimes is another key component of that process. Thank you. And just to kind of wrap this all up, this all comes into, if we talk about the basics of this discovery process and how technology plays in, is preservation, collection and preservation, processing and review technologies all have to continue to evolve to keep up with these new forms of data, and how we get to them, how we preserve them in a defensible way. Again, as the professor mentioned, as attorneys, being able to attest to the fact that your processes are defensible, that your review and your production of data is defensible and complete, all leads to the fact that you have to be able to rely on technology to do that. And the only way we're going to continue to be able to do that is to ensure that the technology is keeping up with the data sources that are out there. And if I can stress anything, is that when it comes to these processes, enlist the help of experts. You may have experts internally. You may need to turn to a third-party expert like KLDiscovery, like TranslateFX, someone like the professor who can help guide a process or a conversation around this. But the key is that bringing those experts in can help drive an effective, efficient, and cost-effective defensible process within that. And again, want to really stress the fact that that those of us that are in this service end of this, or in the academic end where we're looking to bring awareness to those things, are more than happy to continue these conversations around this. And really want to stress the fact that it has to be a collaborative effort, that the evolution of technology is driven by client need, or the need in the industry. So with that, I will turn this over to my co-panelist, back to Timothy, and to then Sam Yip. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric, for your sharing. And so we just heard from Eric sharing on KLDiscovery and also his insights about this legal technology area. Now we would like to pass the floor to Mr. Sam Yip, the co-founder of TranslateFX, to share his experience in this AI company on translation. Thank you very much, Sam. You have the floor.
Hi everyone. Thanks. First of all, I just want to thank LexisNexis for having me here. For those who don't know me, I'm the co-founder of TranslateFX, and before I joined the team to develop AI translation solution. I used to be a lawyer advising on capital markets transactions. And I would like to just take this opportunity to share some of the things that I've observed in the wake of the pandemic in relation to digital transformation. Right. So the first thing I've kind of noticed is that the legal industry's adoption of technology so far seems to primarily focus on the delivering and enabling of the practice of law remotely. So I think some of you may be quite familiar with it already. There has been virtual hearings by the courts in the UK and the US, so that court cases can still proceed as normal. I think the Hong Kong courts also have a similar policy, but according to the barristers I've interviewed, recently they kind of switched back to physical court hearings. There's also been an initiative by the Hong Kong government to create an online dispute resolution platform. Although this the initiative actually started last year before the pandemic. But the development of the platform seemed to have picked up during COVID-19. And I know the team it's actually a team called IBRAM. So I know they have been more active in shopping for a technology solution to enable this Hong Kong government initiative. There's also a wider adoption, I'm sure all of you are aware, a wider adoption of collaborative and conferencing tool like Zoom, like Slack, Microsoft Teams, and whatnot. And I think this adoption of technology in the legal space is more or less a reflection of the wider trend elsewhere, where businesses across industry are moving operations online. And speaking from the translation space, where I'm more familiar with, I think one interesting development is that there's actually been a greater demand for transcription service. So by that, what I mean is that a lot of business meetings are now moved online, conducted remotely. But what it transpires is that a lot of people actually do not quite understand what the other audience are talking about. So I've seen a much greater demand for essentially for translation service just to find transcribers to transcribe the online meeting into words and for record keeping purposes. So far we have seen, I have seen this type of adoption of technology in the legal industry, but I've not seen a broad-based and wide adoption of more sophisticated tools, such as document automation or legal analytics. I think there's a good reason to it. Perhaps the workflow of a legal transaction is often quite complicated, right? So very often you have overlapping or legacy workflows and habits, both internally and externally, that are developed over time within the industry. So it's not, just to echo what Eric said earlier, right? It's not easy to have a silver bullet. And I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution to improve the efficiency across all these workflows. But that said, I still think there's some niche area where legal practice, within a legal practice, where technology can really, really help. So for instance, I think due diligence, the due diligence process can really use some AI technology for assistance. So I recall back in my days as a legal trainee, I was once part of a team of six lawyers to read through a couple hundreds of contracts in relation to an M&A transaction, just to identify and locate some clauses in these contracts. And I think for this type of very tedious due diligence process, AI technology is very well suited and much more efficient than human to carry out. And another area is knowledge management. So for instance, if you're an in-house lawyer, let's say you're an in-house lawyer within a private equity firm, right? So your firm may have over 100 portfolio companies. You can probably use a knowledge management system to keep track of your PE firm's legal rights in these portfolio companies. Things such as board seat participation, the restriction on transfer of shares, tag-along rights, etc., etc. Right. So instead of having like a junior lawyer to read up all these legal rights that your fund may have in the portfolio, you can really just use a knowledge management system to keep track of all these legal rights. And I've known there are companies, startup companies in Asia who are trying to do that. But knowledge management, I don't think it's just limited to for in-house use. I think when it comes to private practice, my personal view is, knowledge management is probably more important for private practice than it is for in-house lawyers. So I think 50%, or probably more than 50% of a lawyer's work is to advise on market practice and to follow precedents of similar transactions in the past, right? This kind of forms the basis of our common law system. And I think technology can go a long way in helping law firms recycling this type of knowledge. Right. There are also other areas which I'm not going to go into, But I think just to wrap it up, I think COVID-19 has accelerated the adoption of some form of technology. I do not know whether this will push the legal sector into a wider adoption of advanced technology. But I'm somewhat optimistic. And I'd love to hear the experience of you guys on this regard. Right. So on that note, I'll just give the floor back to LexisNexis.
So thank you very much, Sam, for your sharing. And riding on that, we'll now move on to the panel discussion. And first, I would like to start off as we have the expertise from the academics, from Professor Wong, and also a commercial provider like KLDiscovery, and also a foreign practitioner and a co-founder of an AI company like from Sam. And we'd like to ride on the experience shared by Sam earlier regarding the development of legal technology. Sam mentioned like the development of legal tech probably in terms they move forward in the due diligence on the knowledge management system. I just wonder if other panelists also, what's your view on the development of the legal tech, technology development post COVID-19? As previously we find things are not possible, but now it's also possible, like virtual hearing. It was probably not that common in Hong Kong, or probably not that welcome because still people go to court in person. And in UK, we noticed like in terms of witnessing a will, probably people could actually witness a will remotely, but probably Hong Kong may or may not going to follow this particular practice in terms of witnessing a will. So may I have the views from other panelists what's regarding the future legal development post COVID-19, and what type of advancement should we expect in the future, like 5G and AI? Is there anything we should foresee or expect in the future?
Professor Wong, I'll defer to you first.
So I have talked a lot about artificial intelligence. I think I didn't actually, when I talk, because I'm not in the field, so I actually did throw out the technology and try to relate it back to the application. Whereas Sam actually made some really good application, for example, due diligence, knowledge management. I think, for example, due diligence in particular is a good thing for AI because the back when you are checking the credentials of different people, I think AI can come into place. And for knowledge management, I guess knowledge management has been around for a long time. So for the legal area, I think it's just domain change. I think it will be there because whenever you want to do AI, you need the knowledge. I mean, domain-specific knowledge before you can drive the application. So the knowledge management part is inevitable. But I think the due diligence part is specific to legal. So I think there are something that the AI part can actually do something on it. And then 5G is another thing that you mentioned, the technology. We mentioned a lot about collecting information from different places online. And these things are sort of in multimedia domain, particularly, for example, images, videos. This will all come in, and very likely that we will have to do the analysis in real time as well. So without the 5G infrastructure, then they would not be possible. That's my take.
Yeah, and I agree with everything, but both Sam and the professor have brought up. One of the other areas where I see this happening, and I completely agree with the whole knowledge management and the data and information governance perspective of this. I mean, we see a big shift within our corporate clients in moving to, for pure business purposes, not just legal purposes, and having a better understanding of their data and being able to maximize returns on investment on that data. So business intelligence purposes, where technologies that may have initially been introduced for a legal purpose.
Oh, you're stuck.
Eric, probably we just lost you. Can you hear us?
I don't think so. He's frozen.
Probably, I think, in terms of the internet connection, that got a little bit of the hiccup in there. And probably while we are just stay online, I would just wait for Eric Robinson to get back to us. For the time being, and we just got a question from the floor. Maybe we'll just loop that question in for everybody's reference and discussion for the time being while we wait for Eric. We got a question on regarding to online court. What you guys would think would likely happen in the upcoming several years, particularly in view of the COVID-19 situation? Either Professor or Sam, would you like to comment on this question?
I actually do not know. I do not know whether there will be a wider move to online court in Hong Kong, especially with the COVID-19 situation seem to subdue a little bit, right, these days, right? I do know the Hong Kong courts, they are prepared. They do have the technology to do video conferencing, in essence, just to conduct court hearings remotely. They kind of prepare for it. But just in reality, I just don't know how, I think there's still a preference within the practitioner to participate in trial physically.
Yeah, well, but I think the technology itself, for example, the data collection part and the actual court case itself, using Zoom and everything, I think that would actually, for example, if COVID happened again, that's necessary. I mean, I don't think we are quite ready yet. I mean, we have to, get the infrastructure already. I think it can be done. It can be done. I mean, even I'm not, I'm not familiar with how a court is run, but intuitively, I can think, for example, preparing the court, you really have to collect a lot of, supporting information, and that can be done by using, data collection techniques, AI techniques, and in terms of the court debate itself, then I think like what we're doing now, the Zooming part is very important. But I'm not sure whether the court is ready for that or not.
I see. Yeah. Thank you, Sam and Professor, for your comments. I believe probably in terms of this question, still need some time to see whether the practitioner is going to develop new habits in terms of attending court in person, or even you doing virtual court hearing, as we notice a new norm probably is coming in relation to this area. Following up on this one, and previously in Professor, in your presentation, you mentioned about this GDPR issues that's going to be more and more prevalent in light of this legal technology, getting consent, or even without COVID now, even with the GDPR in place, it's going to affect a lot of companies in collecting people's consent and data already. And apart from like GDPR, this really crucial issue to like law firms or companies or any people running a business everywhere. Do you foresee like what types of benefits of the technology would bring? Like, is there a specific areas of law like bankruptcy or probate that would benefit hugely from this legal technology advancement, like the due diligence or knowledge management that we were discussing earlier on?
Well, that's what I'm not in the trade, but when you said due diligence, it rings the bell. I mean, I'm in entrepreneurship, so due diligence is a very important thing to us. I think that really can be done, because when we do due diligence is, a lot of the part of it, the main bulk of it is very logical, very scientific. I mean, you are just trying to dig out the relationship between different organizations or people. And for that matter, I mean, it's actually somehow related to this knowledge management thing as well, because, you're trying to build up the ontology, you're trying to build up the knowledge related to different firms, different people. I mean, once you build this thing up, then while you're doing the diligence, when you're doing the search, you are not actually searching the wild space, but you're searching a smaller space in your knowledge graph. So I think that's why the knowledge management part and the due diligence, it actually comes in hand to hand. But more than that, the knowledge management can actually is a necessity for training, for learning, machine learning, for deep learning. Without the domain knowledge, you won't be able to do it. When I keep on saying AI and deep learning techniques, I mean, they are application specific. You really need the domain knowledge, and the knowledge and the knowledge graph and the knowledge database and the knowledge base is what we need for a start. And also one of the problems that I can see, because you really you have to do this kind of training, the corporates itself. I mean, you need existing some kind of existing documents before I can start the training. That would be a problem, because a lot of there are a lot of legacy issue here, because most of the documents are kind of physical, black and white rather than digital. I mean, I had a small business in converting newspaper from what do you call it again? From the let's go from physical form to digital form. For microfiche, we used to have microfiche where all the where the news reporter go into the library and look up the microfiche, and then we have to do the digitization, and it's a big job. I mean, I can foresee that it would be a big job for the legal trade as well. But when we do AI, we have to do, on top of that, we have to do a little bit more as well. But when we do the training part, what we have to do labeling of the text. We have to somehow sort of label them, and for example, when I said label, I have a sentence, which is the noun, which is the verb, which is the place, which is the person. Someone will have to label it. So, and the labeling part is actually require some kind of domain expert as well. Do we have enough experts in doing those labeling to enable the training? So these are all big issues. When we want to run the thing.
Yeah, I agree, Professor. And I think that part of that brings us back to, and I apologize for the technology, as we're talking about technology.
Yeah. Great to have you back, Eric.
Thanks. Yeah, technology is our best friend and our worst enemy. But I think an area where we're seeing a significant increase in the leveraging of artificial intelligence and enhancements in technology is on the left side of the process, where where organizations, particularly the corporate clients, are looking to build systems where they can create classifiers within their data to be able to identify data for certain elements. Again, whether it's the business intelligence element, whether it's the regulatory legal element, but being able to do that so that they can appropriately apply things like retention and compliance rules to their data. And that's leading to the development of technologies, not just in the artificial intelligence realm, but in the archiving and compliance components of where technology is evolving. And a lot of that is stemming from things that have been happening in the legal litigation end of the spectrum. So leveraging, as I was referencing when I lost my connection, the things like predictive coding and predictive analysis for legal review. That type of technology is coming to the forefront in that data management, data governance component as well. But what we are seeing is the advancements in technologies, and this falls squarely into the work that Sam and his group is doing, is on a day-to-day basis, we're seeing a significant increase in these new technologies coming into the legal realm. Things like audio and video files. What do you do with them? How do you review them? It's one thing to be able to sit down and listen to hours and hours of audio files, but being able to transcribe those files so that you can then apply things like predictive analysis to that transcribed text is a huge benefit to clients. It's maybe not such a big deal when you've got 2 or 3 hours of audio files to work with. But if you have hundreds of hours, the sheer cost of having bodies sit down to listen to hundreds of hours of audio files for legal review purposes is no longer acceptable to most clients. So the technology has to evolve to address those needs, and it's happening. And again, Sam and his associates are working on that, and that's where their expertise lies. But we're seeing that in leveraging technologies to facilitate that in the legal review process as well. And then the ability to be able to, for legal purposes, how do you deal with privilege in an audio file? So, we saw that need from clients, and actually developed a tool that allows you to redact an audio file, so that you can produce non-privileged portions of an audio file and be able to track that. So those are examples of where technology is meeting clients where they're at. But I do think, with respect, you mentioned the data privacy regimes. That's something that is having a significant impact on businesses, because in most of these regimes, particularly the GDPR and the regimes that are increasing in popularity and frequency here in the United States, is these rights and privileges around the right to be forgotten, the right to have your data deleted, the right to just know what data an entity is keeping on you. Those, if you are a large, particularly a multinational organization, the impact of that can be significant from both a cost and infrastructure and process component. So evolving technology to meet those needs is a critical process. And being able to then identify that data, extract that data, so that you can provide that data back to individual requesters, or to remediate that data from your systems based upon those requests, I think are key elements in areas where we've built processes, but the technology will continue to evolve to keep up with that.
Okay. So I want to see a little bit more. I mean, I have a lot focusing on the preparation of data. If we were to build a tool, as I mentioned, because of AI, because of deep learning, we have a process of preparation of data. Okay, so I said that, and I mentioned about the difficulties. You need labeling and everything. Then we move on to the second stage in the pipeline and the operation part. In my discussion, I mentioned about several things. I mentioned about explainability. Okay, when you have the data, when the machine helps you to make a decision, you have to explain it. But and currently, there's a problem of explaining the results. That's one thing. And also, then I want to also say something that it's about the trust of the data. Okay, because perhaps during the process of judging or judging something in the legal trade, you apply some kind of AI algorithm on raw data to come up with a decision. Is that valid? Is this trustworthy? Would it be trustable? That's one thing that I don't know. It's a legal issue, because just like, for example, like I remember at some point in the court case, if I were to present some kind of email, I think it's kind of an invalid alibi, because these things are not trustworthy. They were not trusted at some point. Now we are using AI, and we're going to use AI to analyze some kind of data and present it to the court. Is that trustworthy? Would that be taken? That's the operation level. And one more thing that I worry is the future part of it. The future part of it is like this. See, assuming that we rely on our AI algorithm to do the analysis of each cases, to make arguments, okay? So, and then at the current moment in time, there will be a physical person like a judge, a high court judge or a judge, to make a decision based on the alibi or based on the arguments that you make. Fine, he is the one can do it. Then you ask this question, how do we train the judge? The judge comes from normal lawyers, normal solicitors, okay. I come from normal lawyers, not lawyers, I forgot the name. But anyway, so he has to have practice first. But now, if we, at this point in time, letting the AI to replace me, then I will not have such a person anymore in the future. So the judge, the quality of the judge will be affected in the future. So that would be a future problem. It could happen. If you see what I mean.
I want to expand on the point you. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Sam.
Well, I just want to expand. I think you touch a point on a very good point on the trustworthiness of the AI model. I do think, well, even though again I'm a developer in the AI scene, I do not think AI is suitable in all aspects of a legal practice. But I do think there are certain areas where you can isolate, and where having some form of technology is better than having nothing. Again, I just keep going back to due diligence, because due diligence, I think, is just probably the most painful process within any legal transaction, right? And I think due diligence is a very good area to apply some form of technology, because like the documents you go through usually have some form of structure, right? So for instance, a lot of times when you go through due diligence, you're looking for a certain type of clauses, and those type of clauses are often drafted very similarly across all jurisdictions. So for instance, you may have a change of control clause, but it will look very similar in the UK jurisdiction, and in Hong Kong, in the Hong Kong style, Australian style, they all look quite similar. And I think in that sense, having some sort of classification model will go a long way in helping our lawyers to identify, at least have a first round of screening. I think that's a better way to put it. Just have a first round of screening to alert the lawyers as to, okay, what type of documents you pay more attention to. I think that at this stage, that's the best application of AI.
I agree. I mean, I think the due diligence part, as I mentioned, that it's more scientific. I mean, you are actually tracking about the relationship between people, about the background of that person or that company. I think that is really doable. And again, I also agree that even with AI in general, it is only a supporting tool. I mean, you cannot actually rely on that for final decision making. I mean, it just make a recommendation to the end users, and the end user finally will have to make the final decision.
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement with both of you. I think one of the things, and Professor, you raised a very good point, and that's the trustworthiness and the validation piece. You can have the best technology in the world, and but I think part of the challenge is that people lose sight of you could leverage the technology to its fullest extent, but if you don't take the time to validate the analysis that was done, then you have no way to defend it. So it's critical that as part of these processes and leveraging the technology, that we build in these validation protocols in order to get that trust level that you're talking about.
Yeah, but and that's what I said about the explainability part. I mean,
that's right.
Even if I have to make a recommendation to you as the lawyer before you present yourself to the court, I mean, my machine tells me that I should say something like this. You still have to trace back and see why that the machine tells you to do that. I mean, you cannot just bluntly or blindly say that in front of the judge. That's nonsense, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let's face it, the technology is not yet there that we're going to replace lawyers in this process.
Right.
So, and the other reality is that lawyers are generally slow to change anyway. So, and that as a lawyer,
aren't we all? Aren't we all?
That's right. And I think we're a long way away from AI controlling the entire process, to your point, because of that trust and explainability piece of this. There is, I think we have a long ways to go before lawyers are willing, forget whether the technology can do it. We're a long way away from lawyers being willing to rely 100% on an artificial intelligence analytics model. Could we get there someday? It's possible. If natural language processing, which I know is an area of your expertise, continues to evolve to get to a point where it is so fine-tuned that it actually does capture the idiosyncrasies of language, then maybe we get there. But I think, as we all know, the context of language can change significantly based upon the slightest change in a word or the intent of a message that AI isn't necessarily yet to address.
Yeah, but how, you're getting into a little bit deep in some of this research going on now. For example, like when we try to understand the semantic, understand the text itself. Normally it's okay. What about idioms? What about metaphors?
Right.
And what about intent, like you just mentioned? The writing part, there may be an intention of writing that thing. This is a research that people are doing as well, to find out the bias, to find out the intent of things. But it's a long way to go. It's not there yet.
Yeah, and I think as far as areas of law, where to kind of bring back to Timothy's question, is I agree due diligence is a prime target for for leveraging this predictive analysis and artificial intelligence. In our daily work, we see it being applied across all forms of litigation. And the technology itself, from a pure legal application in data analysis and document review, has come a very long way. When we first introduced our proprietary predictive analysis models 11 years ago, people said you had to have at least 100,000 documents in order to have an effective learning model. Today, we're leveraging that very similar, it's evolved, in some ways, that very same technology, data sets with less than 1,000 documents. Because the value of being able to do, if you do nothing more than you leverage the technology to prioritize documents in the course of your review, then you're gaining significant efficiencies. But also, to your point about contracts and due diligence, being able to leverage, not just predictive analytics, but other technologies like near duplicate analysis, to be able to identify clauses in contracts when you're doing due diligence in a mergers and acquisitions environment, to find where you've got similar but maybe slightly different clauses, to understand what the perceived risk may be or what the exposure may be based upon differences in those clauses across contracts, is something that's happening today. It's an area where I think the technology can improve and will improve. But there are different elements in this, again, talking about the due diligence, talking about contract analysis, talking about true litigation, and being able to really leverage these to create efficiencies. From a practical perspective, in the litigation context, we regularly see efficiencies of being able to reduce the actual volume of documents that have to be physically reviewed, on average by anywhere from 20 to 60%. We've had instances where the people applying and crafting the models, doing the training of the systems, have done such an amazing job of doing that training piece, where they've effectively been able to eliminate from review 60, 70, and sometimes 80% of the review population, because there's such low scoring based upon the analytics that they can do statistical sampling of those data sets and then be able to say with a level of defensibility, again, coming back to the validation piece, that they don't have to spend the time, and time equates to money, in reviewing all of those documents. So it's just elements of that we're seeing today, and that it will continue to improve over time, I think. But I think that one of the baseline factors that comes into play with any of these models, and we've talked a lot about training and learning in the system, and it is, to lack of a better way to put it, it's a garbage in, garbage out thing. The training has to be done in a very well thought, well constructed, intentional way, because, and you have to use, and I think, Professor, you mentioned it, subject matter experts in order to leverage that, you know, in a way that is meaningful and that is then also explainable and defensible.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Sam and Eric. It's a very fruitful discussion on this topic. And you also touched upon about training and also whether technology is going to replace lawyers' work. I would just want to, riding on that, just want to ask, like, how should lawyers prepare themselves in this new wave of technology investment to better prepare themselves, either like law firms or even in-house counsels to better prepare themselves for this? Now, before we go into these questions, because I noticed that there's a question in the floor asked by the audience. I just want to address that first, not to leave the audience waiting too long to address her questions. I got a question from the audience who said that the question is, what about drafting of contracts and disclosure? I understand there's legal technology already commercially available for these types of applications. Can you let us know where things stand in this area? So would any panelists like to comment on this one?
Doable. This is what we call natural language generation. Basically,
okay.
I mean, if you look at what is happening in the real world, in the physical world, I mean, if you come to pick a contract, most lawyers just pick up the template and then change a few words and then give it to you, and then by iterations, then it will be correct. So then it can be easily done by a machine, right? Because you have templates, you just pick them up and then you use a natural language generation according to the specific case, then you change some words. Doable. I think it's doable. Well, it saves a lot of time. It may not do the complete job itself, but at least, for example, I come in, then I know that which template that I have to use. I pick it up and which paragraphs that I have to change. That saves a lot of time.
I think so. I think again depends on the circumstances. I think for
Sure.
I think certainly for the very low level type of transactions,
but if you look at buying houses, I mean, these things are very, very standard. I mean, and look at the amount of volumes that you get in Hong Kong. A lot of deals about estates.
I agree. So if it's just like a rental agreement, then you can probably use.
I meant that. I meant that. If it's serious, then it would be very difficult. Yes.
Yeah, probably. I guess like as Sam previous work in capital markets or even in like M&A, probably there's really complicated commercial agreements or syndicated loans and involving really complicated commercial clauses. I just wonder whether those things could be automated or even AI come into play. I believe like probably that scenario still needs a very complex analysis and assistance from lawyers in order to assist on those matters.
There has been contract automations. I've seen that. It can get, at least for a very good first draft, that's definitely doable. But I think the complication is when the party starts to comment on the agreement, and then you have all sorts of circumstances very particular to that corporate client. Then that's where it gets complicated and where technology.
Yeah, and I agree. So the AI is going to come in when you're looking to craft the initial draft, because inevitably lawyers are gonna want to have their say, and it could be just a couple of words here and there, or it could be entire paragraphs and clauses that they want to leverage. But where I think AI in the contract space will evolve to is, in essence, if you think about a relational database, where where you can go in and you can say, okay, I have a particular type of contract that I want, and the system will know that there's particular templates for that, and then give you a pick list of what clauses you think you may want outside of the standard template, right? And then it will help to automate that process. But we are not going to get away. I mean, until the world is controlled by computers, which, again, maybe they'll take over the world someday. But
I hope not. I hope
right.
Not.
But until that happens, lawyers will always have their say.
Sure, I agree on that. The lawyers. To the lawyers.
But there is commercially available, to the question, there is commercially available technology that helps with that today. I think it will continue to evolve.
Thank you. Thank you for the insights and sharing. And I hope that addressed the questions of the audience regarding that topic. And now we just get back to the questions we talked about earlier on regarding like in light of this technology development, some people are probably anxious about the future and whether it's going to replace lawyers' work. And look at it from a more positive light, like how should lawyers prepare themselves in order to survive or even like flourish under the new era, post-COVID, or even the technology advancement to grasp an opportunity and make the most out of it.
Yeah. And I'll start on this one and then defer to my other co-panelists here. But I mean, we deal with a lot of attorneys on a day-to-day basis, and we're dealing with with attorneys that some who have never leveraged technology and that are learning, and others that are power users of technology. I think what we've seen is technology in the legal space has created actually a lot of opportunity for lawyers. There are whole new career paths for lawyers that didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago. So you have lawyers that are now e-discovery attorneys that focus on leveraging technology in the legal analysis and legal review space. You also see here in the US where a lot of the jurisdictions here actually require the attorneys as part of their continuing legal education to proactively partake in technology learning. So it's no longer acceptable to be like the ostrich with your head in the sand. You have to at least be aware that technology is out there, because the regulators are requiring the use of technology. Because again, I've been around long enough to know when if you were producing documents, you were producing tens or hundreds of thousands or millions of pages in paper format, or if you were lucky, even a little bit later, of PDFs or TIFF images without any type of technology underpinning, such as load files or things like that, where you could really look at things. The ability to do that today is really non-existent. And some jurisdictions are a little bit further behind in moving to that fully electronic model, but we're seeing a rapid movement to that. So one, to address that, I think there are new career opportunities for attorneys and legal professionals in general. Whether it's in the actual practice of law or it's in the consulting realm. We've seen a lot of attorneys move into that consulting aspect. But I also think that the subject matter expertise of attorneys becomes even more critical with the advent of these technologies, because again, as we've all mentioned, that having the subject matter expert to teach the system is of critical importance, but it's all.
I'm sorry, Eric, probably just muted yourself. Can you hear us, Eric? We couldn't hear for the time being.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Eric, just a sec before you move on, I just wanted to jump in a little bit. Sorry, Eric. I will let you finish. We still got like some time left, but take conscious of time. I noticed like Professor, not only we need you here, but we also know that your students also need you, probably in another time slot. So I just want to before you leave for your students, do you have any something you want to say regarding that comment? Anything you want to add before you leave for your students? Because I know you still have a class like I don't know in 10 minutes something or five now, 5 minutes now.
Right. I mean, I think the technology can help the legal industry. I think the legal tech part of it will be in place. We just have to how we actually put it in practice. But it's very difficult because technology itself is difficult, but having someone who knows the legal space and the technology space is very, very difficult. So, and I hope that in the future, that somehow in universities, there will be some kind of courses or degree courses as legal tech. That's what I hope.
Yeah. Probably we see if law school going to collaborate with you with your faculty in organizing some courses.
Hopefully. But in the legal space, probably now when they come in, they probably look at IP laws and things like that. It's not application of technology to practice law. So, but I really want to see, legal tech, starting from the technology side and see how it can help, how it can make the legal industry run more efficiently, more, more accurate, more efficiently, and more better. That's what I hope to see. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I cannot stay longer. I have a class at 5:30.
In a few minutes, I believe. Yes, and thank you very much, Professor. I've been joining us.
You guys,
everybody's busy. Thank you, Professor. Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Professor.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay, call me again anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Sorry, Eric, that we cut you in the middle. And sorry, I do. All right, cool. Do you have anything you want to add in relation to what you was talking just now?
No, I think the bottom line is that there are new opportunities, and lawyers are still critical to the process. I think what's important for lawyers to understand is that they have to be technologically aware. They don't have to be technical experts. But if they're not the expert, then they have to have access to the experts to give them, as the professor referred to, that understandability, that explainability component. And Sam, I'm sure you want to jump in on that too.
No, I just want to say I totally agree. I think it's the lawyer technology is nowhere close to replace lawyer. I think it should be you should approach the issue from the other way around. You should think of we should think of from the perspective of a lawyer, right? And just again, coming from a legal background as a previous lawyer, I think it's actually very important. It's very helpful to be aware of what sort of tools are out there to make your legal practice run more efficiently. So back in my days, it's still very email based. I'm sure law firms, at least the bigger law firms these days, will use Teams or Slacks, and I think that would really drive up the adoption of technology.
Sure. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, if we look at another impact of COVID, is that those individuals that were had a technology phobia, had no choice but to start to adopt technology.
I guess like the Law Society provide this law tech fund, hope to alleviate that and provide some subsidies in law firms in terms of legal technology adoption. We got some question and also from the floor as well. I just want to bring that in. And I got a question from an audience and who asked the question, two questions actually. The first question is, at the moment, legal AI still faces quite some resistance from traditional law firms or lawyers. Any suggestions as to how to overcome such resistance?
We have that conversation on a daily basis, and part of it is understanding what is the resistance. If it's a belief, and it usually falls into one of two categories. One, again, not to pick on practicing lawyers, but it's the fear that leveraging technology is going to erode the fee-based system. And while, again, yes, there may be some element of that, I think what we've seen is the corporate clients have shifted to be much more participative in the process and are no longer willing to stand by idly for what I would call the old traditional model where they just turned everything over to the lawyers, and then when the bill came, they just paid it without thinking about it. And I don't think we see that as much anymore. I think the other component of it is that it's pretty easy to start to show what the return on investment in leveraging the technology is. So in part, it's an education process, and it's incumbent upon those of us on the provider side or those of us that are in the legal technology space, whether we're within firms or within corporations, to start to show what those returns on investment can be, because they can be significant. You know, if you're talking about 1 or 2 small investigation matters, then yes, that return on investment is likely small. But when you start to talk about large litigation, the return on investment can literally be hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in cost. And every study that's been done shows that leveraging technology actually improves the accuracy of the review and production process compared to a straight human review. So it's, you know, there are those elements that do come into play, and Sam, I'll give you an opportunity to jump in as well.
So I think the question seems to predicate on the fact that some law firms bias against AI. I'm not entirely sure about that actually. I think it's yes and no. I think some law firms they do have some hesitation just because lawyers are quite conservative. Hesitation in terms of adopting AI technology, but also because I think we have seen a very we have seen a lot of AI startup propping up, you know, kind of across the world, right? And a lot of this so-called AI technology are probably not too useful to lawyers, or at least it's not good enough for lawyers in performing their tasks. So I just keep coming back to due diligence. I think again, I think there are certain areas of law like due diligence and knowledge management where you are really just looking for pattern, and AI is very good at that type of application. But things like contract analytics, I know there are, I'm sure some of the audience may have heard about it. There were some sort of NDA, non-disclosure agreement, NDA analytics that came out a couple of years ago. And the kind of unanimous feedback I've got from, at least from the audience in Hong Kong, right, it's just not, it's nowhere close to accurate enough for their use. And because NDA for a very well-trained lawyer, it really takes no more than perhaps 45 minutes to take a look at. And the problem is not frequent enough. So you may have one NDA per week to look at. And for them, and that's why for them it's not, they don't even bother using AI for that, right? So I think it really comes back to, okay, what is the AI, the technology for, right? If it's going through a huge volume of data, a huge volume of document and contracts, then yes, I think you should definitely use AI. And if there's any sort of resistance, then we can look into why law firms resisted, right? But when it comes to like very one-off job, like analyzing an NDA, and I think I'm not so sure why. Again, being a cheerleader of AI technology, there are times I'm not sure why technology, so-called technology, exists for certain area, for certain products. Right?
Yeah, Sam, I agree. I think the key is that you can't generalize AI across the entire legal space, right? There are different technologies that fit into different areas of the space. So it's important to be able to understand what technologies are available for your specific need, and then be able to make educated choices.
Yep. And probably this is, we still have 2 minutes left. This is probably going to be the last question for today's panel discussion. For contract analysis or document analysis, as mentioned, it is now being applied to M&A due diligence processes. Are there any more potential areas that you think contract analysis can be applied to in the coming years?
Sam, you want to go first? You want?
Sure. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier. So I think contract analytics, running AI on let's say, and not identifying the contracting parties, things like that can be done within the knowledge management space. I think that's where it is most promising.
Yeah, and this is where I wish we had the professor back, because I think natural language processing and some of the components in like entity identification in contract analysis will be an evolving and growing area. But it's also, again, leveraging the right technology for the right purpose. you can leverage different forms of technology and different forms of artificial intelligence based upon what your need is. So in the M&A, again, to go back to what Sam has brought up several times is the due diligence component in M&A is, artificial intelligence, can help there. I mean, there's no reason not to leverage it. You don't lose anything by leveraging it. And there's very few circumstances where you actually lose anything by leveraging technology to create efficiencies in the process.
Mm. Yeah, I think for us that in the States that we have something similar that probably not in terms of contract analysis, but in terms of relationship analysis, that to be able to show the relationship between listed companies and law firms, or what types of law firms they have contracted in the past, and whether what types of, for when we look at a law firm, what types of listed companies they have advised in the past, all this data will be available because it's all public. And not probably that would be another way to look at it in terms of contract analysis. So I think that's gonna is now 5:31. That's gonna like the end of today's discussion. But I just want to thank everyone, even including Professor Wong, although he's not here with us now because he needs to attend to his students, and that's more important. And just want to thank Professor Wong, thank Eric, and also thank Sam, because it's very fortunate for us as the legal research company, as you know us for a very, very long time, to be able to grab the legal insights and experts from across academics, even former practitioners, or even from corporates, to understand how this legal technology is going to proceed or even develop in the future. We hope that today's seminar is hopeful, fruitful, and also very helpful to all the audience today, either as law firm partners or in-house counsels, because that's the majority as according to our participants list. And we hope that this is going to be helpful to you guys. And I'm sure, as I mentioned, like he doesn't know like why there is some AI out there as sometimes it's not that helpful. Please feel free to check out KLDiscovery and also TranslateFX. They're especially we look at them. Some of their products is actually really, really helpful. We tried TranslateFX before and translate some of the documents. I'm very thankful for the services as well. So thank you very much for joining us, Eric, Sam, and Professor Wong, although he's not here. So thank you very much. And here's our contacts. Please feel free to follow us and check out the details. We have some more courses coming up in the future. Probably because new normal, I would say everything in a virtual basis for the time being. Hopefully we can see you in person later on, probably in 2021. That's our best bet. So thank you all, and thank you everyone. That's the end of today's webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Sam. Bye-bye.